Here we
If
go.
anyone's seen us, you know that we're notorious for not recording.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Just before we get started, would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're all connecting here today. And on behalf of Halad to Health, pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join our quick info night. We almost never do this. And we just thought for this year, we might just hop back on, given that we haven't been around for a few years, just to give everyone the real rundown, because things have changed a little bit. And we're just going to record this for everyone who can take the time to watch this before they apply from the comfort of their own homes. So if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yourselves yet, my name is Eliza. I'm one of the co-founders and the managing director at Halad to Health. And for usually on these kind of mission trips, at least one of us from Australia will come with you. It'll be Colleen, myself, or someone else. And on this July mission trip, it will be myself. So whoever comes on board will spend a lot of time with you. I would love to introduce you to Colleen. If you've done any of our GAMS out of other tuition sort of things, you would have seen a lot of Colleen. And in terms of the process moving forward, you'll hear a lot from her as well. So Carls, I might get you to intro yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Colleen. I am the ops manager here at Halad. I take care of a lot of the student front things in GAMSAT, and more recently taken on the program coordinator for our missions. So you'll see me around, and I'll pass it to Charity.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charity. I'm from the Halad Health Philippines, currently taking the role as the executive director for our programs department. And what I usually do is I manage all the programs that the organization has, especially taking on the enhancement and building of safe spaces across Bukidnon and even in Mindanao. I think that's it, Atiles. I'm turning back
cool. And I
back
can
to you.
explain what all of those terms mean in a second, but very much Charity is the only one between the three of us actually in the Philippines. And so if you have any questions already around applying and what it's like in the Philippines, what the experience is like in country, what anything is like in country, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. And then we can get around to them at the end, or Charity can answer them already, because she'll very much be the go-to person, the person you rely on when you're in country. So you do want to be best friends with Charity because she'll look after you. And likewise, in terms of the application process and those next things, we'll talk a bit about that today. But any of those questions you already have, pop that in the chat, and then Carleen can get to them at the end. But cool, awesome. And so just before, and also this is like super casual, like we always never do this as a super formal sort of situation. So feel free to unmute if you have any questions, just ping in. It's more like a, I guess, conversation that we're trying to have here. But yeah, we do have a few things that we want to go through. If we haven't gotten to anything at the end, there'll be some times for questions or whatnot. Pop in the chat if you want, or feel free to unmute, up to you. Cool. So about Halad to Health. So we might even just start here in terms of what everyone as probably a student from Australia knows Halad to Health as, but would also love to give everyone a bit of context as to what someone like Charity, who's in the Philippines, knows Halad to Health Philippines as, because we are a completely different foundation or charity in the Philippines. And so it's really important for those people who do go across to know that, because there is a different sort of branding and perception of Halad in the Philippines. So in Australia, very much, there are two main things, I guess, that we do. We provide non-for-profit sort of GAMSAT MMI services for anyone who wants to become, I guess, a doctor and do tuition services through us. And sort of all those proceeds go towards the Halad to Health Foundation. So that's probably the main reason, or the main way that most people know about us. But actually how we all started was we were just a group of friends, went over to the the Philippines to go and volunteer, and then started actually getting noticed by the local government as students who really could be really helpful in this specific local area called Bukidnon, or the province of Bukidnon, which feel free to go on Google now so you can have a sense of where that actually is in the world. But it's basically a sort of a landlocked province in the southern island of the Philippines. And that sometimes makes it really hard for things like access to anything really, but like healthcare or whatnot, because it's very far, I guess, to get from different ports into the center of an island. So you guys, whoever will come on, will experience that probably 2-3 hour bus or truck or van ride that will take from an entry port, which is the airport, all the way into sort of this landlocked rural city. And you'll really get to experience sort of maybe why remoteness is such a struggle. But coming back to sort of Halad, so we run those GAMSAT tuition services, or tuition services for students who want to get into medical courses, and also at another sort of I guess the more meaningful side is that we started these things called mission trips, and they started in 2019. We ran 4 of them just before sort of the world locked down, and every time there were more students who wanted to sort of sign up or whatnot. And it was really just like a 2-week trip over to this area called Bukidnon that we had formed this great relationship with, and they very much had asked for students just like us. And at the time, I was an undergrad biomedicine commerce student who had absolutely no experience under my belt or whatnot. But the local doctors and everyone there sort of took me under their wing, taught me exactly what to do in terms of not only just helping the procedures, but what everything was, every instrument was, every sort of patient's sort of history, and what we're going to do with them in situation, and sort of how I could even help them. Not just the hands-on piece, but really the learning piece, which quite often you don't really get that one-on-one time here, especially when you're in a big cohort of students. And I just thought that was such an invaluable thing that sort of changed the trajectory of what I decided to go on and do. Ironically, it was not medicine, but you know, for some people it was. And yeah, I just wanted to pay that forward and give that experience to more people. And I know for myself back in 2019, 2018 years, you know, it was actually really hard to find experiences that were hands-on enough for, I guess, pre-med, biomed type students, that, you know, and it was really hard to organize, and that didn't necessarily have the connections and whatnot. And so now that we've established this really sort of very genuine and very authentic relationship with the local government over there, and they very much ask for sort of predominantly, I guess, you know, Australian-based students to come over and help them. You know, it's a great feeling to, one, go over there and experience it all for yourself, but also to be appreciated for that. And then I guess the broader context of sort of, that's Halad Health in Australia. We do those sort of things. And we'll deep dive into the mission trips in a bit. But over in the Philippines, where sort of Charity is right now, she is in Bukidnon right now. Amazing that she has great internet today, but quite often you'll see it's glitchy. It's, you know, an area that doesn't have terrific connection like internet or whatnot. And so it was a very difficult time during the pandemic. And as you can imagine, for about 2-3 years, we weren't able to run these missions, given all of sort of the COVID situation. So it made the most of the situation where we had already sort of at that point run 4 medical mission trips. We had basically sort of promised with the local government that would do this every 6 months, and we'd provide some hands on deck in terms of bringing students over. And then that sort of all went to shambles. And at the time, you know, when you make those kind of promises, you have to keep them, sort of thing. And so we really asked sort of how can we continue helping? And the biggest sort of thing that's come out of the pandemic and during, and I don't think it's news to everyone, was that especially for the demographic that we sort of reach, which is the young people in Bukidnon, the biggest sort of health problem over there started becoming the mental health crisis, where high rates of teen depression, high rates of teen suicide. And unfortunately, still to this day, even when you go over, you'll be able to experience and hear stories firsthand of those sort of situations happening in schools. For almost, I would say, every young person that I've met in Bukidnon would have at least known one person who has, you know, experienced something like that in their classroom. So end up becoming sort of the leading organization in Bukit Non to provide free mental health counseling services. And as sort of Charity mentioned, the main program that we do over there is run these things called safe spaces, which is very similar to the concept of Headspace. And so most people, or most young people, when you go over to the Philippines, will know us as a mental health organization, and they will know us for our safe spaces and for things like free counseling and free sort of education in their schools. And they expect experiences more like the thing on the slide, where we go to their school and we have great talks about emotional health and talking about their emotions and what they might be going through, rather than us coming in and sort of pretending like we're sort of the second hand to the doctors and nurses. But you know, that's the experience from there. And so that's just the broader context. And also just in terms of scale and reach of sort of that Halad to Health brand in Bukit Non, as I mentioned, I mean, it's not hard to be the leading organization when you're the only organization that runs sort of free mental health counseling services, but very much have a very wide sort of reach online and in schools in particular, schools and hospital networks as well. So most people would have seen our logo or seen sort of what we do at some point in their journey over the last few years. I guess the main thing is to know that we also have at the bottom there 41 youth ambassadors. They're very much similar to you guys, your counterparts in terms of volunteers, and we call them ambassadors. And they're very much leaders in the local schools, universities, high schools or whatnot, who will, and as you'll probably find super important for yourselves, because they'll be taking you around, being your sort of buddy and translating when you need sort of situations. So it's great that we have local volunteers there too. They not only volunteer in our schools, but they love volunteering when you guys go across and get to experience the culture through their eyes as well. And just on there as well, because of all the work during the pandemic as a mental health organization, have won awards in the Philippines and been recognized by the National Youth Commission. So that's a bit about, I guess, the organization in the Philippines. And so you'll quite often, especially, whether the two causes in terms of mental health in the Philippines or, just being able to have medical experiences for students here in Australia, our whole ethos as a Halad Health brand is to really close that gap in health inequalities. So let's deep dive into, I guess, the experience that everyone is here for. And we'll start off by just watching the experience of one of our past volunteers, Emma, who went on, I guess, the last trip before the pandemic hit, and a bit about that experience that can give you a bit of light to what it actually is like.
Hi, my name is Emma. I'm studying biomedicine at Melbourne University at the Bukit Non Hospital. It's been a day of a lot of learning and listening. There have actually been quite a few memorable experiences already, but yeah, definitely listening to Ma'am Jen today, the nurse doing her rounds, her lovely bedside manner, talking to the patients and their watchers or parents, and also listening about stories, nomads or Indigenous people who travel 2 days to come to the hospital to receive care. As they explained to us their motto of help the people, I really saw that today.
Video there, where she's
Once you are actually infected with cysto and those worm parasites. We are here at the outpatient department of the City Health Office, and today Sophia and myself, we presented on cystosomiasis, had some interaction from patients, so asking questions, and also about what snails actually have the parasite and whether the snails that they cook to eat might be infected. With the help from some of the nurses to translate, we were able to explain to them that it's the very small snails that actually have the cystosomiasis parasite. And if it gets really bad, it can lead to seizures in the brain. Hey guys, so we are at Bukit Non Provincial Hospital. We had our second and last day here, and in such little time we have been able to experience so much. Today really has been an amazing day. We were on the delivery room and also the operating room today. So we were able to experience a cesarean section, which was amazing. We'd never experienced anything close to it. I was actually tearing up when the baby was being lifted out of the mother's uterus.
Chemicals in your body called hormones. Has anyone heard of hormones?
Hey guys, so we are at Central Mindanao University Laboratory and High School, and we have just done our first mini health fair talking about teenage pregnancy. So I think the most memorable moment was as we were talking, Miguel and I, especially about the very serious consequences of teenage pregnancies, what we had seen at the Bukidnon Hospital as well, and how doctors were delivering babies from mothers who were only 11 years old. So as we were explaining these things, the students, the look on their faces, were kind of understanding and feeling a little enlightened. One of the students used that word to describe how they were feeling. So I think that was truly amazing, because that is exactly what we are here to do. And not just with one voice, but as one voice becomes a few voices, and that becomes many voices. So we really want to spread the awareness and actually make that form of change in people's minds, but also how that translates to their actions as well.
Okay, awesome, terrific. As you can see already, just from Emma's experience, she's able to highlight really that, you know, the realities on the ground in the Philippines are really different. When you walk into a hospital, you don't necessarily expect to see wards and wards of maybe pregnant sort of teenagers or whatnot, but that is really a problem that they're experiencing and really have to combat and embrace as well. Over there, you'll get to see a lot of sort of farming diseases, which, you know, also might not necessarily be what's most prevalent here. So all those sort of differences that you get to appreciate. And I guess the experiences are very much more like Emma's sort of first half of the video, where it's more around the hospital and the medical setting. She did go on a health education mission, which will be something that will run at the start of next year, where it's more so focused primarily on sort of going to schools and reaching young people there. So I guess the overview for this winter. Here is essentially everything you need to know on a page, and we'll go and deep dive on all of these aspects in a second. So the dates are now hard set, and they hopefully align with sort of school calendars or whatnot. But really the expectation is that you'll find your own way to arrive at the port of Davao City, which is an airport, on that Friday. And feel free to come beforehand or stay on after if you would like to, but that's just discretionary at your own sort of pace. But very much the expectation that you'll be able to be in Davao by that Friday. There is a day or two in terms of leeway, but we'll very much be driving off into the rural sort of area by that weekend. So that is the sort of hard deadline. And then we'll drive everyone back to Davao City on Sunday for everyone's flight out. Again, feel free to, if you'd like to stay on for longer, that can be a discretionary sort of at your own option. So where is it actually? So many sort of words have been just, locations have been spat out at you. So the island is called Mindanao. It's the southern island of the Philippines. The arrival sort of port is Davao City. Where we're actually going to be running the program is in the province of Bukidnon, that landlocked province in the middle of Mindanao. And there are sort of under the province of Bukidnon, there are a few sort of, I guess, city names, and you'll probably primarily stay in the area called Valencia City, which probably has the only mall there, and so therefore the most sort of accessible, and you'll actually get to see sort of our stall in that mall, and is the only sort of most accessible place in terms of accommodation and whatnot. But the first week and the running of the medical mission component, you will be going into more of the mountainous areas where, you know, there probably is not that kind of accommodation. So, you know, 2 hours up and down to be able to go and see the patients. In terms of eligibility, we have locked it in for just Australian students for, I guess, insurance reasons, and very much just looking for students who are very keen in terms of studying into that health and medical area. How many are we taking? So 12 to 20 volunteers probably this time around. Each cohort tends to be around 10 volunteers, and we find that's really the sweet spot-ish in terms of volunteers getting enough time and one-on-one time with all the very generous doctors who want to always just take you around and show you more and give you more experiences, but also just for safety reasons, keeping those numbers small. So what does this specific winter mission actually involve? So it's broken into really two parts: the medical mission delivery and then the hospital rotations aspect, which is more of what I guess Emma's experience was like, as we saw in that video. And the medical mission delivery is something that none of the students previously in our cohorts have delivered before, but it's something really special this time because we've really furthered our relationship with the local government of the province of Bukidnon, who are basically the local governments are the ones who coordinate their central sort of medical missions. And those specific terms really mean it's a very condensed few days where doctors and volunteers will go out to the far-flung mountainous areas where they don't even probably have a functioning all year round sort of hospital. And it's very sort of more common in those kind of areas where the doctors actually go over to sort of these rural villages rather than villages sort of coming all the way down the mountains to the hospitals themselves, because that means, loss of work days or whatnot. And so it's really important that these villages actually do get medical attention, and it's really at the aid of volunteers who take their time out and volunteer doctors who take their time out to go and serve them. What are we looking for in terms of volunteers? Our biggest sort of point around this that we really want to get away, I guess, on this info session is that it's absolutely not about experience, and it's completely all about the energy that you bring. Just showing that you're very much that coachable, really hungry to learn and participate, really keen student who knows how to be flexible. You're in a foreign country, you kind of have to have a bit of that sort of common sense and social awareness around you. Just all those aspects in terms of someone who would want to be able to sort of spend our 2 weeks with is what we want to sort of bring on, and someone who we can trust. If we put you in front of sort of the governor or we put you in front of doctors, you'll be able to hold your own. In terms of the program costs altogether, we'll break this down in a bit, but it very much is parts of just personal expense and then just covering really your own personal expenses for the 16 or 17 days that you're there, plus also covering all the sort of medical consumables that are used during that medical mission. And then Colleen will go into what the application process is and sort of the next steps from here. So what does the actual itinerary look like when we break down the program into the 2 weeks? So in terms of week 1, fly out, get to hopefully Davao City by Friday. It is unfortunately never going to be a direct flight, but just transiting somewhere, it is probably going to be about 14-ish hours. So it is a long travel day. And then yes, arriving in Davao City, we will grab everyone from the airport, get you to sort of your hotel, and that's sort of your own time to rest. And we'll give you a date or whatnot to wander around, rest, and then we'll take that sort of 2-3 hour drive to Bukidnon, which is a beautiful scenic drive, but you'll definitely get to appreciate the concept of remoteness on that drive. Then I guess the official mission starts on the next week on the Monday. This is very much, we call it the outreach week, mission week, whatever you want to call it. But very much you already have local Filipino health professionals dedicated to sort of teaching, guiding you through this experience. And as we sort of mentioned, it might be like 2 to 3 sort of students to 1 health professional. And that seems to be the really great sweet spot, because then you can achieve a lot with sort of more hands on deck, but also your health professional is also able to mentor you, in depth and that kind of thing. So they're already already allocated to us. And so on day 1, very cultural, we'll do a governor's call. The governor is the person who's invited you down, very much like we're the ones doing the selection process, but they would also love to meet you first before you sort of go out into the communities under their jurisdiction. We'll do a bit of a cultural orientation in person, like just show where everything is, how you get around, have some independence type of thing, a bit of admin, and just to make sure that we have everything together and we have it all ready to go in terms of getting you into the right places. And then we'll do a sort of a welcome with everyone who's sort of a government official who would want to, and they very much want to meet you. I can't stress that enough. You'll be overwhelmed by the amount that people want to interact with you. And yeah, you'll have just a great lunch with sort of the governor and the government officials there who have invited you. I thought we did more on the Monday, but that's okay. On Tuesday, so day 2, probably just giving people some rest there. On the Tuesday, so this is where we'll probably go into the mountainous areas and start doing what we call community consultations. It's really just like a screening process where very much people in these villages have been told that doctors are coming, and that is really their opportunity to see a doctor. And they've also been told that they get free procedures if they are due for something or if their procedures is on the list that's eligible. And so you'll have about a day or 2 where you'll do that screening process depending on how many people show up. And usually it's basically on that morning, we'll use a local hospital, but very much, it's just a room. And people will come and line up in the morning, and they will come and see if they're eligible for what they think they need. That might even, some of them, that might look like a checkup and checking their vitals and checking their sort of condition that they've been told that they have. But for some people, they'll very much be eligible for a procedure. And that is when you'll have a more lengthy process, and your health professional will sort of tell you and assign you to a station where you can really help out in the screening process. They'll show you how to get through, say, get a patient's history all the way to vitals to see if they're eligible for what they need to be going in for. And so some common procedures quite often are like cyst tumor removals. And you'll see that quite often cyst tumor removals are not small because, some of these people are going years without seeing a doctor, and so they quite often will blow up. You'll see quite a lot in terms of diseases of the thyroid as well, mass removal. And you might even see some, probably in this sort of area, teenage pregnancies come through, and for those kind of checkups. And there are a list of sort of other procedures that go through, but it will be contingent on sort of what other equipments that we can bring to sort of see if we're eligible to be able to safely deliver that procedure with the health professionals there. Then in the next 2 days, so essentially after those screening days, we have our schedule of procedures that can occur. And then your health professional will actually start delivering some of those procedures. So actually doing in the OR, which is very much the same room but scrubbed down to make sure it's sanitized. And you'll get to like really learn with just really one room, how they make the most of that situation. How do they turn sort of this into an OR? How do they have a post-op area? And your health professional will help assign you to all those kind of roles so that you can have an experience of not just being in the OR, being a scrub nurse, but also sort of pre-care, post-op care. And probably around those 2 days, you'll probably get through about 50 to 100 maybe patients in terms of minor or major procedures there. And on the Friday, this is really your sort of discharge around sort of day. It's great to sort of meet the journey of a lot of your patients that come through. You sort of have gone through the experience of seeing their history, seeing what they were eligible for, going through with them emotionally the procedure that they were on. And now you get to hopefully discharge them and sort of check that they're all right by going around to all the sort of hospital wards that they're sort of held in, and then helping discharge them. We'll have a rest and recreation weekend. This is a great sort of bonding time for the team. Quite often we do, things like going to the lake, climbing the mountains, and just doing cultural things, and going to quite often Filipino families' homes for a meal and cooking all together, and enjoying some music and some food. And then week 2 is clinical week. So very much way more similar to the experience that Emma had, but this time with a bit of a caveat and something really important, because the health, minister of this specific local government has really only newly been elected. And so really needs a sense of what is happening on the ground today, because they have a big problem in terms of getting the right information to the right people so that they can get the right services at the right time, essentially. So the dissemination of information is not the best right now. And sort of we don't need to answer that question right now, but I think it would be great, and he thinks it would be great if he could get sort of a bit of a what's happening on the ground across many of our hospitals, and what can we learn from them, and how can we improve so that we can communicate to our patients better. So on the Monday, you'll get a bit of a briefing from that governor on the patient navigation problem. Bit of a mouthful, but essentially he'll talk to you about what he hopes to achieve, what he aims to achieve, a bit of the research ask that he'll sort of ask in terms of bringing the expertise of essentially having maybe seen a bit of how we communicate in terms of the Medicare system, the public healthcare system here, and some of those learnings that we can bring over. But really with, I guess, an outsider's lens, I think sometimes students think that, the view that we have as students is not so valuable, but it's incredibly valuable for people who don't necessarily have the time and the manpower to go to every single hospital and see exactly what's going on, to really get a bit of a summary from an outsider's perspective and saying, what are things that we can do new, what are things that we can implement and sort of learn from. So you'll basically, because that's essentially the problem statement that you're helping solve for the governor, when you go over and do all these ward rounds across, and this time we're going to do many different hospitals. So there are already sort of 3-4-ish on the list that you'll go through, one every day. So yeah, you'll go through about 4-ish hospitals. You'll go through their ward rounds, do the daily things that the doctors sort of do. Again, you'll be assigned a specific sort of health professional and get to rotate around and get to see sort of every department and every facet of what's special about that hospital. You'll very much find that some hospitals are huge. They have great government resources and they can cater based on their bed capacity, and they have all the sort of medicines and equipments in the right quantities and in all the right sort of supply chains. And then there are just some that are just scraping by and just want to help those who absolutely have nothing. And so it's experiencing all of that, but with the lens of, at the end of the day, on the Thursday, at the end of that sort of week, you'll have a presentation back to the provincial government. Now, I say presentation very loosely. It's probably just going to be a chat over lunch, but you'll get to play back sort of the things that you got to experience in a very, I guess, more structured way. And as a team, I guess, collaboratively come up with just a view on what's happening in terms of patient communication right now, and where the pain points are, and what are the things that they should probably start prioritizing solving for. And that is invaluable to them already. You'll have your farewell lunch with those government officials, and then we'll head back on the Friday. You'll have another rest and recreation in more of a city area. So usually in this one, we'll take you island hopping, we'll take you I guess on the islands and doing sort of island things, and then on the Sunday you'll get to come back to Melbourne, or wherever you are in Australia. So that is a bit of the itinerary. Now, the sort of main thing I preface here is that's why we really treasure people who are flexible, because if you have ever been to a Southeast Asian country, you'll understand that working with government officials, things will change in a heartbeat. And so times will get changed, our meetings will get rescheduled or whatnot, and it's just, we'll get all the things that we need to do done. But it's really being patient in terms of understanding that, people are busy and everywhere, and that this is our tentative schedule. We would love to stick to this, but, probably is going to change many times before we even get onto the ground. Cool. In terms of then, what are the few people that we're going to sort of love to select to come with us? Like I said, I guess the whole motto of taking this away with the lens of when you go and apply and sort of do a video for us, and is it's all about your energy. All we want is for you to communicate your energy, your dreams, why you'd love to do this, and it's not at all about experience. If you're on this call and you're a first year sort of pre-med student and think that this is only open to sort of the final year students or whatnot, it's completely not the case. I went on my first volunteer experience on my first year, and it was changed the trajectory of what I wanted to go and do in uni. And so I think it's invaluable for sure that it's not based on experience when you get these opportunities. So all about energy. We just want to really see the hunger that you have for learning, right? Like we're essentially all going to go over to this foreign place together. Like if you're not going to enjoy the time, you're not going to appreciate all these health professionals who are volunteering too and taking their time out of their job. You know, that won't be a win-win for everyone. The flexible point, which is, you know, things are always going to change. It's just finding people who definitely have that positive glass half full energy all the time, who can always make the most out of those situations. There have been times when our schedules have been absolutely delayed for whatnot, and we were just like, okay, we have a few hours. Everyone, let's not, you know, scatter away. Let's all do a team bonding thing. Let's go sit on the grass, play some games or whatnot. You know, making the most out of those situations. And I guess always being that kind of energy who puts themselves out there, and I say this with a nuance that leads in their own way, because not all necessarily leaders have to be out in front, and everyone has their own way of leading, but very much knowing in yourself what makes you comfortable, what kind of a team member player you play and are comfortable with. That makes a really, I mean, this is a very condensed 2-week experience. So knowing exactly what you'd like to play as a team member is super invaluable. Cool. Now, in terms of the program cost overview, so it's very much broken down into 2 main buckets, which is sort of the pre-arranged things that we will pre-arrange for you, but are still the cost of the participant. And then on this right-hand side, the expenses, which are your own personal discretionary, I guess, spending, and you get to choose sort of where it goes to, or how you get to select things like your flights or how you spend on meals or whatnot kind of thing. So that sort of number is a bit more flexible. But in terms of the actual pre-arranged things, this is just to make everyone's life easier, and also for security and safety reasons, that everyone really should stay in the same place. So that's why we pre-arrange everyone's accommodation for you, and at a sort of better rate. So this is covering, I think, all of the 17 nights of accommodation we'll book for you in advance. We'll book the private van type transportation from Davao to Bukidnon, and you will understand why when you get there. That is so important to have an air-conditioned van for that 2-3 hour ride back and forth. And we'll have a bit of a welcome pack, so everyone's just like got everything that they need in terms of just travel requirements, as well as uniform and scrubs, so that they can actually enter these hospitals. And then the big ticket item, I guess, at the very top is that mission donation. So this, I guess, essentially is going to cover all the medical consumables. And I guess, you know, really important to call out that when we go to these sort of rural areas, and yes, we volunteer our time, we absolutely don't want to deplete them of their very limited supplies in these very limited areas. And so before we even go, we need to make sure that we can actually pay for all of the medical sort of supplies that are going to be used. And that is why we have to sort of collect that early, so that we can purchase that, get it over before we even arrive. So yeah, everything that you'll use on the trip, your PPE, your medical consumables, the equipment, will be covered for in that donation. And then, yeah, just typically flights back and forth, doesn't matter where you're from in Australia, is around $1,000. And then meals is usually around $10 per meal. I would say that's a bit expensive, but I think it's less than that. But I think we've been a bit conservative here. Awesome. And then the application process of what's next, we'll hand over to sort of Colleen, who leads this piece.
Thank you. Before I go on to the application process, I'll just quickly mention that Liz did go through a lot of information, and it's all covered in a information booklet that's linked to the application form, so you guys don't have to worry about it or screenshot or anything like that. Don't stress. This recording will also go out to everyone too. But in terms of the application process, we, like Eliza mentioned, there's really no strict criteria at all. We just want to hear about your passion, ambitions, and what this trip will do for you. But our applications will open today. They will close next Friday at 5 p.m. and interviews will be held on Saturday, the 13th. So please keep that day free. For interviews though, it's actually a very informal, quick chat just to get to know you guys. It's nothing serious at all. But I will mention that the quicker you apply, the quicker you'll know whether you're successful or not, because we'll be handing out those interviews throughout this week all the way up till Friday. So if you for example, apply today or tomorrow, you might be able to get a response from us whether you're successful for an interview within the next day or so. Otherwise, that is all that I had to go through. Oh, sorry, in terms of the application, we asked you a couple questions, and some will be in regardings to like your vaccinations, your working with children's, your passport and things like that. So those are things that you have to consider organising if you don't have already, to make sure that it's in time for the mission in end of June. Otherwise, that's all I wanted to go through. If you have any questions, please shoot through to my email. That's also in the information booklet, and I'll be more than happy to help you through the application process. Did I miss anything, Liz? I think that's it.
Awesome. We may as well just shoot the link of the application onto, there'll be an email after this, but we'll just shoot the link in the chat now so you can go on and really we've tried to make this as quick as possible. You know, people have assignments to do and all of that is super important. And so it's no longer even like, you don't even have to write anything. It's just like a 3-minute, send us like a Snapchat, as quick as that sort of situation. Because yeah, I mean, we can only really get the energy piece of really seeing how people talk and that kind of thing. So it's definitely not a huge, hopefully, burden to apply. And yeah, we very much look forward to seeing everyone's videos. I will stop the recording here so that people can start asking questions if you'd like, and if you're more comfortable with that being